Alright, so I've been traveling for the last week or so I didn't make a video for a little bit, but some pretty major things happened, at least as it pertains to my specific interests. So, those being, there's been news about both the Metal Gear Solid movie and the Bloodborne movie, which, what a delight for me. So, I figured I could ease back into doing these weekly videos by talking about my general feelings on those projects. So first up, Metal Gear Solid. If I had to bet, which I guess I could in today's prediction market hellscape, but I won't because it is 100% haram, I would wager that film is probably never gonna come out. And that is because the vibe I get from that movie is still more like this is a pie in the sky project that is being used to raise the profile of filmmakers more than a thing that they genuinely want to execute on and do right by. But in a world where it does come out though, I'm also still skeptical about it being anything more than a very basic cookie cutter Hollywood action movie. The reason being, I'm going to sound like a massive knob here, but unless you have like a genuine love and deep familiarity with the Metal Gear Solid series, I think a movie adaptation is going to be incredibly difficult to pull off and incredibly difficult to pull off well. People always talk about how convoluted and difficult to follow the story of Metal Gear Solid is. I don't agree. I think that if you play the games, you can very easily follow the narrative thread from one game to the next. But when you try and take all that and make it work for a movie, I can see it living up to that reputation of being quite messy and convoluted and difficult to follow. So much of the overall narrative and the character arcs are reliant on things that happen at various points in the overall timeline. And I think in a movie, it's going to be really difficult to untangle all that in a way that doesn't feel like it's being reductive and actually makes it coherent and has all the essential pieces you need to tell a good Metal Gear Solid story. And because of that, I don't really have faith that the Hollywood machine can deliver a Metal Gear Solid movie that has the qualities of what makes Metal Gear memorable and special. I'm not super optimistic that the movie will come out with, the underlying message of, about genetic determinism or the manipulation of digital information or the ills of nuclear proliferation or evils of government or whether love can bloom on the battlefield, that kind of stuff. I think, like I said, what we're more likely to get is Hollywood identifying that Solid Snake is a cool army guy that does sneaky stuff, and there's a big robot and a few weirdos in the story, and the end result is John Wick meets a Steven Seagal movie or something like that. It's kind of forgettable, kind of kooky, weird situation action flick that has just enough elements to reel in some fans, but largely excises or just doesn't have the more meaningful and thoughtful elements of the Metal Gear Solid IP. The one thing I could at least confidently say about Jordan Vogt-Roberts, who was previously attached to the Metal Gear Solid movie project, is that he is a legit super fan of Metal Gear that really understood the IP and what made it one of the medium's best stories. And that confidence in his passion actually comes from conversations I had with him. I spoke to him a few times, and it was very evident to me that he was as much a Metal Gear and Kojima nerd as I am. And I don't really know that much about the new directors, Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein, who are now directing it. I haven't heard about Derek Connolly much. He's the last person that was reported to have worked on a script, so admittedly I'm making a lot of assumptions here, perhaps even not being super fair to them. Maybe they're all crazy fans of Metal Gear Solid and they get it, but The vibe around the movie doesn't feel great right now to me. The way the new creative team was introduced for it was not great. There's this quote from the directors that basically says something to the effect of Metal Gear Solid is groundbreaking, this cinematic masterpiece, and that it revolutionized video games. And they talk about being thrilled and honored to bring Hideo Kojima's iconic characters and the unforgettable world to life in movies. And okay, cool. That sounds like the right thing to say, but also it sounds like a very basic PR statement, kind of like a cookie cutter quote that you throw out there when your name is attached to a known property that has a vocal fan base. The other thing that Lipovsky and Stein kind of did was they launched a new company that develops films that they describe as having a focus on being wildly fun and commercial, character-driven, genre-bending experiences. The quote for that announcement was that they're, being propped up as the masters of visuals and suspense and two of the most impressive director/producers working today, and that they've got multiple projects across Sony's film labels and that they're an important part of Sony's film family going forward. And all that together, it kind of gives the impression that Metal Gear Solid was kind of picked from a pile of properties available to them to kind of drum up excitement about those two directors' involvement in Sony films more than their ability to handle and execute a Metal Gear Solid adaptation. I get the feeling that investors and shareholders are getting more out of the announcement that they're doing a Metal Gear Solid movie than Metal Gear Solid fans or even video game enjoyers generally are getting. There's this kind of noticeable lack of passion and authenticity in the rollout that is kind of a red flag for me. And the other thing is that I'm assuming Kojima is going to have little to no involvement in this movie, since he has little to no involvement in the Metal Gear Solid IP and Konami as the IP holder these days. Obviously, they had that big bust up and it seems like the beef has been squashed, but I don't think he's got much interest in coming on board to, help out with a movie that he probably is also going to be distancing himself from too and won't be able to take the full credit for, if you know what I mean. And that all of that for me is concerning, because it means that the adaptation is, like, at worst, it's at the mercy of the creative whims of a Hollywood studio and execs, and at best is being kind of guided somewhat by Konami, which doesn't have a great track record with movie adaptations of its own games. I guess that Silent Hill film, the original one, was okay, the latest one not so much. There's also like a whole bunch of other complicated questions that don't have answers, and it feels like we're still very, very far away from getting those answers. Like, is Oscar Isaac still involved? Like, he's aging like fine wine, but he is still aging, which means, is he going to play Solid Snake or is he going to play Big Boss? And if he's going to play Big Boss, is Sony going to commit to a period piece and really put in the work to make that happen? I think the last time Oscar Isaac mentioned the Metal Gear Solid movie, it was him saying that they're still looking for a story, which is, again, not exactly making me very confident in the project. Like I said, in all likelihood, this thing is probably never going to come out. So I'm not getting too heated about it. And at the very least, I'm not getting my hopes up for it. If it does come out, I'll watch it, but I'm not going to be going in there expecting it to nail Metal Gear Solid for me. And that's fine. I still have the games. Those are doing the trick for me. I'm not too worried about it. The other major announcement, obviously, near and dear to my heart, Bloodborne movie, which I actually, conversely, have a little more confidence in it, both making it to release and also being good. And a massive, significant part of that comes from the fact that it's animated. I, as an idea, prefer over a live action Bloodborne movie, because I think it makes nailing the aesthetic and the mood of that world a little more achievable. That Bloodborne movie needs to be like stylized, and I think Sony has a pretty good track record of doing stylized animated / CG movies, between the Spider-Verse movies and then more recently the GOAT movie, the Stephen Curry basketball movie, and then I'm pretty sure they worked on K-pop Demon Hunters as well. They've got a history and they've got expertise in making animated / CGI, that kind of style of movie. So a little more confident in that. I think a live action Bloodborne movie is liable to end up looking a bit like a cheap fan film, unless you really go all in and spend a lot of money doing like a super high budget version of the Brotherhood of the Wolf-esque style thing, which is commonly held up as a somewhat of a match to Bloodborne and an inspiration to Miyazaki in some respects, which if you look at that movie, you're like, yeah, I see what it is. And then they also said it's R-rated, which means hopefully they won't be shying away from the more adult themes and character arcs or the kind of visceral nature of it. There aren't actually many mature animated movies out there, so especially none that, you know, are on the big screen, which I'm assuming is where this movie is going to end up at some point. So I think that's a pretty unique hook. I really like the idea of what is basically an animated cosmic horror film. That is definitely getting me excited. The other big green flag that for me is making me a little more confident in the Bloodborne movie making it out and being good is the involvement of Jacksepticeye, who is producer on the film. Content creator attachments to projects usually feel like a bit of a gimmick to me, but on this occasion, having him as a producer is a massive plus for me. Obviously, he has made his love for Bloodborne very apparent through his videos and his general existence. He's got like a tattoo of it. He's done many videos about it. You know, he's talked effusively about his love for Bloodborne, but also like I've had the pleasure of chatting to him and we talked about Bloodborne. Again, it was pretty brief, but in the time that I spent talking to him, I knew immediately that I was talking to someone that mirrors my own obsession with Bloodborne, which, if this is somehow your first time ever seeing me, my love of Bloodborne is very well documented. It is my favorite game of all time, and you can't see beyond this frame, but there's like all kinds of Bloodborne shit all over the place, and ask my friends, they'll tell you about how much I love it. But my hope is that Sean Jacksepticeye will have a good amount of input into that project, which I think he will, because I think if he does and he's given that kind of freedom to get involved, he'll guide it to the right place. I feel confident in his authenticity, his love of it, and his ability to take whatever that project is to where it needs to be to fulfill his dreams of a Bloodborne movie. And if he's doing that for himself, I feel good about him doing it for me as well. So, like I said, I can see that passion and I can see where the love of the property is coming from. And if you compare the reveal or the re-reveal of Metal Gear Solid, that press release style quote and the propping up of those two directors with the Jacksepticeye video announcing his involvement in the Bloodborne project, you can see night and day the difference.
And I promise you, I'm going to do my best, my absolute best. I'm going to put everything I have into this and try my best to make it as good as possible. I can't believe I'm able to like make this video. I can't believe I'm able to have my name and Bloodborne in like the same sentences together. It's just so cool, man. I'm so honored and I feel so privileged, and I don't take that honor lightly.
That is what I want to see in a video game movie adaptation, especially for something as big as a Metal Gear, or in this case, a Bloodborne. And the other thing that's worth keeping in mind is Sony still has a working relationship with From Software, which is different from Kojima Productions and Konami. And so my hope is that they'll be available as a resource too. I'm sure, given the opportunity, From Software and Miyazaki wouldn't be like, don't want to talk to you, but we don't want to help you about this with this. Miyazaki clearly, he's said that it's his favorite project. He loves that IP. So I'm sure that given the opportunity, he'll want to get involved. And it's kind of wild that, you know, there's now 2 From Software movies being made between Bloodborne and Elden Ring from A24 and Alex Garland. It's an exciting time. The question for the Bloodborne movie is like, what is it going to be about? I think there's a lot of options for what that movie could be about, narrative. I want the movie in how it approaches the world of Bloodborne to kind of take a focused approach. It should be a piece of the world that is being realized in a lot of detail and tells a small story within it, and also kind of paves the way for more to be done in that universe. I know the idea of a Bloodborne cinematic universe sounds awful. I don't really think of it as that way. I think of it as like this universe where you can tell anthology stories that ultimately are pieces to a bigger story, in the same way that you would learn and consume the story of a From Software game through item descriptions. Like, imagine each new entry in the movie series or TV series, whatever it may be, representing a piece, an item with its description. As you consume more and more of it, you build the overall picture and a better understanding of that world. I think that is a good reflection of, you know, how From Software approaches its storytelling, and it could work for taking that world and adapting it into a bigger thing. So yeah, I don't know. That's just some thoughts in my mind. You do the whole Tomb of the Gods things to set up things, and you could even use the fishing hamlet stuff to return to for like context and kind of like plot out the mystery of what's really going on. And I'm hyped about it. And like I said, I'm excited that, at least for Bloodborne, someone that I know and trust is on the project. I wish that Konami could find that and Sony could find that for Metal Gear, but you know, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. Anyways, thank you for watching. While you're here, please subscribe. Hopefully I'll be back soon with another video. In the meantime, hit the like button and all that, and I will see you next time. Peace. Peace. Peace.